I go ahead and, you see we have a double here. This guy is a double. But if you notice, this data was inputted as a string. So if you have a string, you cannot do any math with the strings. You have to take the string and convert it to a number. Okay? Because remember, the string can take anything like names. So can you add Joe and N? No, you can't. Okay? In this case, the data that I'm having there is all numbers, because remember when we created the data that we put in there was the value of the x's, the loops, the 0, the 1s, and the stuff like that, just like what we did over here. So we know for a fact that whatever is there is a number. Okay? Now there's other variables, there's other methods that you can test to see if the data that you're reading is a digit. As a matter of fact, the method is called is a digit. Then if you know that it's a digit, it's a number, then you can do the math. But in this case, I know that all the data there is math. So what you do here is you say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and add whatever I just read into this guy here, right? So this is what we read, which is an integer, right? Which is right there. It's in the input file record. Input file record. So to convert this string to an integer, I put double because I'm adding it to a double. If I was adding it to an integer, I would put integer, right? And then over here, the method is called parse double. If I was adding this, if I was converting this to an integer, it will say integer parse integer. When I mean integer, I mean int, okay? And if it was a float, it will say float parse float. Okay, so this is very simple. And this is to convert a string to a number. Right? So you just got another 3 methods from a string there. You're going to make 1200. Right? So we're doing this with the integers. So we have something called integer here. And look, it's very similar. We go integer, parse, int. And what is this compared to this guy here? Remember we talked about 10 minutes ago? Right. Remember that I mentioned that some people use characters as opposed to strings? That's the wrapper. Right. So this actually is using a wrapper here. And this is also a wrapper because you notice that it's a capital D as opposed to a lowercase d. So these guys are wrappers.
Just the beginning before the dot, or the entire?
No, the
integer dot.
It's a wrapper. It's a wrapper that can convert integers. That you can also convert integers and float to anything. You can convert back and forth. So the idea is that on collections you can only pass objects, not primitives. That's the whole idea, okay? So this one, what it's doing is converting this from, this is a string, which is an object, is converting this to a primitive, okay? So it's going back from something that is not a primitive, it's making it a primitive, okay? By the way, you can also do math with the word integer. You can actually add them. Okay? You can also do math with them. But on the primitives, you can only do math. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm taking a string class and making it into a primitive type. Okay? I'm saying, okay, go ahead and get a double, parse it and make it into a regular double. Take an integer, parse it and make it into a regular primitive called int. So now that they are primitives, in this case, I go ahead and say, I'm just adding the things, right? Then I'm reading it, I'm printing that I read, and I'm reading the next line, and I continue adding until we get to the end. And then what happens here? I'm printing the total amount of the data there, and I'm using the printf, the sum double, and the sum int, which are these two guys that are here. You You guys have this program. Do you? Yeah. This is the program they have. This is the one that reads the files, add data to the file, creates a file. Now this method all it does is it takes the data and adds it and prints the code. Let's find out if it works. So when you create the file, the system creates the file in the same place where you have the default is the same place where you have the program. Okay. So I remember I used this one last time and I renamed it, so I'm going to delete it. So this is, I'm going to delete this guy. Okay. So we don't have any files right now. So let's create one. Oh, there we go. Right here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and it says number one, I'm going to open and write a file. Okay, let's see if it did it. Yeah, there it is. Let's find out, what do you think is in there? 10 to the 0, right. 10 to the 0. Okay. So, what we're going to do here. Let's go ahead and add all the values, okay? So we're going to do a 4 there. 10 to the 0, how much is that? I don't remember. But that one is a total of 55. Let's see if the file is still there. Yep, still there. Still has data there. So we're good, right? Because we opened the file and then we read it, we did the computation, and then we closed it. Okay? So now we're going to go ahead and say, let's do number 3. So number 3 is going to read the data that is in there. And you see, put 10, 9, all of them to the end here. So it opened the file, it was number 3, and it read and printed, displayed that file there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open and write a 16 file. And that one, what it's going to do is going to add data to it, okay? So that was number 2, right? I'm doing it once, I'm doing it twice, and I'm doing it 3 times. Okay, so now I want to go ahead and see it. That's number 3. Look at all the data. You see, it added data to it. Right, and if we see the data, it's still one data file, but it has a lot more data than before. Okay, because we were using the true statement there, so we'll just continue adding to it. So what will happen if we say, okay, I want to open and write file number 1. What it's going to do is going to erase the data and create table 1. Okay. So I created that one.